First of all, thank you to the university for having me and our company. It's exciting to be here, and really, as we kind of forge the environment for creative learning and really allowing the students that we're cultivating here in Rochester to kind of engage with companies like ours that are out there in the wild trying to build and commercialize all these exciting technologies. I kind of crafted this in line with some of the learnings that we've been taking for the past several years, and a little bit about me in terms of just kind of this conference was a great opportunity to kind of take a step back in time. I remember when I first started my career very early on, I worked for a company called Silicon Graphics Cray Research, and some of you may be familiar with that. Others maybe not, but it was a phenomenally exciting company and was at the forefront of building graphical and compute-based devices, supercomputers, all kinds of great technology that frankly when I first started there, we had this thing called the Magic Bus, which is, I apologize for the poor quality of the digital picture there, but that's kind of like the most advanced digital picture at the time of kind of what was coming out of Rochester here from Kodak. I took that, I think, with like a DC-210 camera, and this particular semi-truck had inside of it just an amazing array of immersive and technical devices that were kind of my introduction to AR, VR. And it's frankly quite amazing to me that back in the late 90s, kind of what I was seeing at that time, and I thought in 5 years, right, so much of this stuff is going to be figured out and it's going to be, you know, all kinds of great things and here we are, you know, 25 years later, and there's so much more to be done. And I think that's what's really exciting about this space, is that it is tremendously vast in what's possible and the kinds of problems that you can solve. And, you know, if I look in my career and the opportunities kind of going from silicon graphics and being at the forefront of some really exciting visualization technologies, and going then on to work for companies like Global Crossing and Level 3. Global Crossing had a big presence here in Rochester, and some of the smartest, most amazing people that I ever worked with were a part of that company and in this area, and really just helped create some exciting, I mean, I was part of the team that took optical wavelength technology and created a product that built communication infrastructure all around the world, right? 10 gig, even upwards into the 40 gig range now when I was leaving there, to really create an environment and an ecosystem for putting all these really cool kind of AR, VR technologies on top of that and letting them thrive. And so as a part of what I wanted to try to do here today is, first of all, introduce you to Immersitech. So we started that company in 2018 when there were a few of us that had come out of the communication industry that said, boy, really can't believe that audio in conferencing and things like that was still pretty bad. It was like, hey, wait a second, we're 20, 30 years beyond kind of the infancy of some of these technologies, and really this stuff should be a lot better than it is. And so we founded the company in looking at what are some creative and differentiated ways that we could kind of revisit the problem of online communication audio and try to make a dent in kinds of the things that make it so that for those of us that have been through the past several years, to make it so your lives get quite a bit better in terms of being able to listen and understand and comprehend things that are being said. And so we're a small startup. We have around 11 employees and we're growing quickly. We've been hiring a lot of U of R students. We have, out of Mark's audio engineering program, we have, you know, 4 or 5 people that have really been tremendous contributors to our growing over the past several years. And I'm very excited to see more of those kinds of talented people come, you know, from University of Rochester, RIT, and really across the country for that matter, that get excited about these kinds of technologies. And so, you know, I wanted to kind of baseline in saying, and with students, and hopefully they'll get an opportunity to listen to this playback, in that, you know, AR, VR is a tremendously complex and I would say noisy space. There's certainly so many dimensions of it that have been kind of put out there for people to immerse themselves in. And I think one good thing is recently there's been kind of now a framework or structure, you know, in terms of whatever you may think about the metaverse, the ability to kind of determine and understand the way AR, VR is going to kind of interact in the world around us. We now have at least start the beginnings of a framework for being able to engage in that. And I would say for the students and even for the entrepreneurs and business owners, and obviously the people at the universities, you know, I think it's always important. You know, my background is in product management and strategic thinking as it relates to corporate development. And it's kind of taking that important step back, right? And understanding what does this ecosystem look like? Who are the players? Who are the real innovators? What are the kinds of things that you could do to create value in these ecosystems? And I think, you know, it's too often where people kind of dive in with, they think they have an answer without anybody having a problem. And those are the kinds of things that I think, just as we're all together and kind of building this community of AR, VR advocates, that we do those kinds of things and kind of cultivate each other's understanding of these environments. I think the other piece of it is, you know, how do we play in this? How do we get an opportunity to see and touch and feel and listen to all the great elements of these environments and the tools that are being developed, right? You'll hear later from Vuzix and just some really cool, exciting technologies that are coming about. And frankly, many of us that build some of these tools, we look for innovators among us that take those tools and do really creative, cool things with them. And so, you know, I can't stress enough that taking the time at night, putting on your different, your Oculus or Vuzix goggles, or the kinds of things that can make it so that you kind of immerse yourself in these environments and determine what's good, what needs some help. And frankly, there's some really excellent, awesome things that are happening, and how do you determine if you want to become a part of that, especially with partnerships. I think a good deal of what we're going to see and the opportunities that exist is us coming together and creating synergies across the kinds of things that can make the outcomes of our businesses that much better. And so, you know, as we founded Immersitech and we realized audio is not where it needs to be, especially, you know, in the AR, VR world, it's kind of like, what are we trying to accomplish, right? I think, you know, we boiled it down to being in a position to say, how awesome would it be to have effortless conversation, right? So for those of you that engage in Zoom calls, or you're in your gaming environments trying to do the various Call of Duty or whatever it may be, how often are you pushing the mute button, trying to adjust your microphone, getting your headset right, all those kinds of things? Our goal was to make it so that there could be an environment of effortless communication, where you really are in a position to not have to worry about all those extraneous things that take you away from the task at hand and the really exciting things that you can be doing in the experience itself. And so it all started with kind of, okay, what are the kinds of things that are going to help make effortless? And we kind of got down to the nuts and bolts of it, and that our brains needed some help. There's so many things that are in the environment today that make it very difficult for our brains to comprehend and to engage in so many different types of AR, VR types of environments. So if you think about the challenges of, you know, just trying to, first of all, feel like you're immersed in something, right? Many of us can put our various goggles on, maybe fully VR, and we hear the dogs barking, we hear all these crazy distractions that are going on around us. And that was one of the things that very early on that we had done some early work in spatial audio, and to kind of create these immersive, or fully audio immersive experiences, there was still so many other distractions that existed in the environment. And so that's where we determined, okay, we got to get back to the brain. We've got to determine what are the kinds of things that will help it process the things that are coming at it much more easily, much more in a way that, like I said, feels effortless. And so we started with kind of looking at traditional methods of noise removal and things like that. Many of you are well versed in that and the kinds of things that existed for many years, right? Many of us from communication markets would say, wow, we thought we had the best of the best at the time, and then when really some of this new, really exciting machine learning and deep learning technology started to come into the forefront, we're like, wow, some of the most advanced technology in audio sounded terrible in comparison to what neural networks and all those capabilities could bring to the table. And that's one of the things, as I was talking to Neil, and kind of in terms of what a company like us needs in terms of students and their interest in building and learning about machine learning, deep learning, really AI-oriented technologies. It's having that understanding of the real key aspects of the user experience. I had it in some of my previous slides, but I really want to emphasize it here, in that there's obviously some very sciencey aspects of everything that can be done with machine learning and really a broad set of techniques associated to audio processing. But frankly, again, stepping back and understanding how it interacts with the various users, and things as simple as the HRTFs associated with our own ears and the differences associated with those characteristics, and how do you make it so that you can personalize an ecosystem of audio that is not just for 1 or 10 million that may have a profile of that one, but really trying to make it so you're flexible enough and building your models in such a way that account for the variations that can exist in these ecosystems. You know, one of the exciting things that I really think is going to be kind of at the forefront of advancements in this space, especially in AR, VR, is that many of us, we go to work all day, or we're in school all day, we're in our various calls if you're remote, and you're then like, oh, I've got to meet with my kids' class or teacher, parent-teacher, and I'm using the same tools to go from my work environment to my kind of, here's dealing with the family environment, and then you may go and do the game. All of those things now are kind of all melding together, right? And so in what we were trying to do with noise management, the ability to remove a dog barking or a baby crying or all those kind of really interesting problematic distractions, if you're in a family call with your grandparents and they're like, so how's the baby doing? How's the family dog? Well, if in a noise cancellation kind of environment where you haven't taken into account that those things may matter, you may have gotten rid of all of them, and they're seeing the dog jumping around, hearing nothing, the baby waving, and all that's gone. And so context also plays a very huge role in how we can create advancements in this technology that make it so the user and the interests that they have in terms of their context become very, very important. And so, I put that out there as something that we're always looking for people that are kind of thinking about those kinds of things, right? It's not just setting a model that's going to get rid of, significant numbers of noises or improving voices, but really thinking about how does the human interact in these environments, and what kind of what kind of cues and what kind of other elements can you provide to them that make that experience much more engaging, productive, so on and so forth. Sorry, they wouldn't let me bring any water in here. It's going to be crazy. So what has Immersitech done to kind of deliver on this? And so we built what we think is the product that the brain needs. And we call it Immersitech Engage. And it's really a culmination of kind of 3 core technologies. So as we discussed, we have noise cancellation and things that we're doing in kind of the machine learning and deep learning space to make it so the amalgamation of all those things that bother us when we're in online environments, we can try to get rid of them. Secondarily, once you've kind of gotten rid of all that stuff, what are the things you want to bring back into the experience? And most likely it's being actually able to hear the people that you're trying to listen to and take the characteristics of their voice and the things that make them, that their personality come through, that you can bring that back into the experience. And maybe if they don't talk very loud, you can bring them up in volume, you know, just simple little characteristics that can make the listening experience that much better. And so that's one of the things when we put these pieces together, we pay a lot of attention to how they interact together. Because a lot of people may have experienced when you take a lot of noise out of a sound stream and try to have voice that's kind of interweaved in there, you start destroying the voice and you start getting very robotic, very kind of nonsensical things that can come out the other side. And so a good deal of the work that we've been doing as a team, and really am very interested in having more interaction with the community on how we can continue to make it better, is how do those things couple together, interact in a way that makes them sound much more natural, still getting rid of the things that you don't want to hear, enhancing the things that you do want to hear, and then take it and put it spatially, where then you have the opportunity. Most technologies today are still mono. If you're on Zoom, you're on most of those still, from a voice and communication amongst each other perspective, still have single channel mono as the foundation of those communication platforms. A lot of that had to do with the amount of bandwidth that existed across, you know, smartphones and things. That world has changed quite a bit. Like, the great news is we're now in a position where the infrastructure associated with these technologies has reached a point where we can really take advantage of adding stereo and being able to make it so you can create positional audio for not only conferencing for business, but really do it in ways that many of us have probably not even thought of yet, right? But again, our goal was to kind of make sure we could start at a foundational level and then try to make it so that it would fit into the existing infrastructure of the large communication providers and kind of what is becoming some of this new next generation of interactive players that are creating things like Clubhouse and other kind of immersive tools to allow people to communicate effectively with each other. And so, you know, there's an example here that I have from at least the technology implementation perspective that's saying, hey, if you want to make it just in an app and put it on the edge and make it so it could be a smartphone capability for somebody, that's a possibility with the way that we've architected these tools. Or if you're in large-scale infrastructure with, you know, many of the communication providers that deal with tens of millions of users, the capability exists to have it fortified and be able to insert into their cloud infrastructure so that it can scale and have the efficiencies associated with doing that kind of heavy lifting as well. And so, you know, kind of back to the thinking about how your product or your the attributes of what you're trying to do, it's always that step back and making sure that for the people you're trying to engage with, making sure it's going to work with how they're trying to do things, as well as making sure that at the end of the day, the user experience is as good as it can be. And so that goes kind of to this final slide in terms of, like, who can benefit from this, right? I think a lot of people are thinking AR, VR, and they're thinking gaming, they're thinking, you know, industrial applications and things that I think we're very excited to see in some of the upcoming presentations. But there's a great opportunity to have these technologies improve just simple contact and call center applications. Like when you call up and you're trying to get help with something, or you're chatting online, that these technologies can make a difference to make it so that it's more productive, right? How many of you just have regular phone calls or whatever, and just because you can't hear the other participant, feel like everything takes that much longer. It's just a burden, right? The brain wants to give up, especially after you've had 15 hours of Zoom calls during the day. And so being able to have business communications get better. Remote learning, right? Many of us, and a number of you over the past several years have been very immersed in that. And how can you make it so that not only that you're hearing somebody like me speaking to a room of people, but more importantly, hearing each other and being able to share that confluence of ideas and how those things can make a difference in terms of voice clarity and things like that. And then social entertainment, this is probably the one I'm most excited about because it gives me the opportunity to immerse myself with people that I've either grown up with that are in Montana or in California and feel like I'm at a football game with them or at a concert and sharing the experience of enjoying that together in a way that without AR, VR is just not possible, right? You have to sense that, you know, I'm sitting next to my brother who's in North Carolina or cousins in Montana. And frankly, I think many of us feel the opportunities to get closer in our various units and relationships are really enabled by some of these technologies and how they're going to move us forward. And we're at the forefront of that. It's funny that, like I said, back with Silicon Graphics, I thought, oh man, this is going to be figured out and we're going to be having all this, especially audio, figured out by 2000, no problem. We're still here. There's still so much that can be done, especially in the area of audio and how it interacts with the visual aspects of things, right? So it's not just one thing to get great audio, but how do you synchronize it with video and these immersive environments? And so the two things that I'd kind of leave you with is, you know, as a community, not everybody's going to have the latest, greatest smartphones or headsets or all those things. I think let's make sure we try to ensure that there's a level of capability and awesomeness that exists at even the lowest levels of this technology, right? And make it so that the experiences for people like we were talking about the community earlier, right? Making it so as we build these things, like one of our main kind of founding principles was that our audio technology could be deployed via just a standard set of stereo speakers or stereo headphones. It didn't have to be the latest, greatest. All you needed was stereo, and that you could get the benefit of that experience. And that's I can't tell you how important I think that is. And secondarily, how do we work with each other to make sure that we can interconnect all the awesomeness that exists between our various capabilities to make a greater good? And I think that's something too that, you know, too often we get so mired in all the granularity and details of the things we do that we forget, hey, what if we wanted to interconnect with this guy or this cool thing? And so also keep that in mind. And I think with the kind of thinking and collaboration that exists, especially with us, with U of R and RIT, I'm so excited about what we've been able to do with just those communities and really excited to see as this AR, VR and the community continues to grow, how we can be a part of it. And again, appreciate your time. And I think if there's any time for questions, I'll let you determine the schedule.